Welcome back to the chosen journey, the chosen baseball journey. Now, folks, I told you last week we're gonna have a surprise on this program. Happy New Year, and we spent a year with Steve Carsey talking about his life, his baseball journey. Steve is now off to the Angels and will be their bullpen coach for the 2024 season. And he's going to be pausing with us during the season, and we'll find out why because we're going to be discussing a new baseball journey, new life journey with our friend from a previous episodes, and it is Karim Garcia. Mr. Garcia, welcome back.
Jonathan, thank you very much for having me on the program. It's always a pleasure.
Now, when I reached out to you in December and told you my harebrained scheme that with Steve pausing, would you like to jump back in and talk with us every week? Were you surprised to hear from me that way?
Actually, I did, because I know you have your program well set up already with Steve, great program. And now that Steve got a job, well, open up to someone else. And I'm very grateful for you to give me the opportunity to be in the program.
Well, I gotta say, I'm a little biased. I'm actually not a huge Blue Jays fan, but I like this color, so I wore this color right now. But Steve was one of my favorite pitchers watching back in the day, and you were one of my favorite hitters, my friend. And for me, as a reporting on baseball, talking baseball, living baseball, to be able to sit with one of my idols and be able to discuss baseball, this is like a dream come true. So it goes both ways, my friend.
Thank you very much. Happy to hear that.
Now, for the fans listening, because, from a perspective to understand, we're sitting here now in January, right? Spring training is around the corner. You've experienced for decades spring trainings, right? As far as your life and your career. Now, for people to understand from Steve's perspective, right? When you're going to be coaching in baseball versus playing and spring training is about to start, do you have a lot of free time as a coach or not really?
Nah, not really. I mean, you have to be earlier than the players over there because you have the meetings for exactly where you're going to work on that day. So, if you're a pitching coach, hitting coach, whatever it is, the drills you're going to be working on. And plus, you have some guys that you need to work out with them because they're having problems on their swing or their arm position. So, you got early workouts. So, you have the early workout at 7 because you have the meeting with the players at 8. That means that I have to be there at 6 in the morning at the clubhouse getting ready for those guys that I have to see before my meeting with everyone else. So it's not that easy. Plus, after you finish, you have to make a report to tell exactly how you see all the players, especially when you're invited to the major league camp and you're not in the roster. And some of those guys, only a few of them can stay, and are choosing to be on the 25-man roster. You have to put more attention and report every single day.
Now, as far as when you're a baseball lifer, and you and Steve, I would definitely put you in that category, starting your baseball careers at very, very young ages and progressing to the major leagues at young ages, and then coaching afterwards in baseball, staying in baseball. It's in your blood. I was not shocked when Steve took a couple years to go spend with his son as his son was maturing, transitioning from grade school to high school. And by the way, Kingston Carsey, future first round draft pick. Remember, I told you that.
Yeah.
Baseball teams love their second generation, third generation players for certain. But once baseball is in your blood, it's pretty hard to step away from it, isn't it?
It's almost impossible to hang the spikes. Once you hang the spikes, your next job, like you mentioned, is try to get a job coaching. What I did and what Steve did is I took a few years off too. I took 3 years off from baseball, kind of like clean myself a little bit from everything, try to soak in everything that I did on my career and focus on my family too, because, for such a long time, 25 years playing baseball, only they see me half of the times, you know. They were starting to forget my names, my kids. So it is difficult, but it was a great time for me to spend with them. Now going back to baseball, it's like riding a bike, It takes a couple of days. It doesn't take a week. It takes a couple of days to get back in it. and then it's like you were never left.
And with you following your career, playing, Major League Baseball, spring training, winter ball, World Baseball Classic, internationally, you never really left the game. You just kept going from zone to zone, and it felt like for nearly 20 years, what did you get? Maybe 1 month off in the year? It felt like it.
Sometimes not even that. Sometimes I got 15 days off because when I went to Korea or I went to Japan, they start in February and they don't finish till October, November if you go all the way to the finals. So you get 2 months or 3 months, but since I play winter ball, I only took 2 weeks off and then start playing winter ball. Finish winter ball, go to the Caribbean series, and get them back to Japan or Korea. So basically 15, maybe 20 days you get off and that's it.
It's incredible. And baseball this year, I don't know if you think so, Kareem, but I've kind of noticed this year, particularly in the off season, it felt like the whole market was waiting for Otani, basically. And without Otani, Yamamoto making their free agent decisions, it felt like teams were not moving at all. And sitting at the beginning of January, you look at the list of free agents, it's very lengthy. Very few players have signed versus how many are available. And I remember back in our day, back when you were on the field and I was in the crowd and cheering you, in those days, November, December, everybody was getting snapped up. That's the way it felt. And by the time you came to January, if you didn't get picked up as a free agent, you were in the Boxing Day bin, so to speak. And
Yes.
teams said, we're out of money. We spent all the money. Too bad. Now it's a whole different game. It's kind of like the Scott Boras game where they're saying, well, spring training's a month away. We got lots of time. You can even sign in spring training. Don't worry about it. As a player, when you went through these motions, was it easier to sign earlier in the off season, or were you okay waiting towards spring training? Like, how were your thoughts about the free agency process and the timing?
To tell you the truth, back in the days, I hated to be waiting. Like you said, January, February, you're in trouble because all the teams were full already. They have all the players, and if you get to sign with someone else as an invitee or try to fight for a job, it's difficult. Nowadays, it's more like a cat and a mouse type of game. They play this hard to get or hard to sign, and it gets a toll into the player too. Believe me. I mean, you like to sign early. You like to be, preparing for what are you doing in the spring training for the season.
And the numbers. I mean, just very recently, Harrison Bader just signed with the Mets, 1 year, 10.5 mil, I believe. And it's kind of funny now. If you've been injured, if you're playing part-time, you're very good defensively, decent bat, it's automatically 10 million. Is it amazing with the money flowing now through the game?
Well, TV has a lot to do with it, radio, everything else. They're all pouring money in. Well, basically, TV is the biggest one, of course, and these guys have to spend the money somewhere. You know, so basically, when my time you pay $750,000, now you pay 7 million and a half, $7.5 million for a person. You it's just a perspective. 10, 15 years ago compared to now that's what it is. And the same thing happened back in the 80s, in the 90s. The guys go, oh, I can't believe this guy's making $10 million now. Now, $10 million is just a guy that doesn't play every day compared to the guys that play every day make one, two, $300 million.
You look at the numbers. I remember back in the day, Nolan Ryan signing for $1 million was a big deal in his time. When Kirby Puckett became the first $3 million player, that was a very big deal. Now everybody's getting 3 million, even $3 million signing bonuses. And you look at the numbers, like they were debating on the radio this morning about Blake Snell and where he's going to be heading up. And you look at his numbers and went a whole season, I believe, without a complete game. And the number of quality starts, he had one season of 20 quality starts, and Garrett Cole had 6 or 7 of them. And the measuring stick now for players for statistics, it's skewed a lot. Like a Kevin Kiermaier, who's a very strong defensive player, Gold Gloves year in year out, but with his bat, back in 20 years ago, he's maybe waiting for a spring training invite. Now he's getting a 2 year contract, 25 million. It's the money economics blows me away still, and I think it's only going to get more and more. And I got to ask you, have you ever done the math saying after my best season, if I was a free agent now, what kind of money would I have earned, or do you block that out of your head?
I completely blocked out of my head because it would have pissed me off. But I mean, I play in a different era. These guys deserve whatever the money that they get. I mean, that's why it's the Major League Baseball Association, the union for the players to get paid. And to when they retire, not to have any troubles. Like other sports, sometimes they do have it. And like you mentioned, one of the first contracts, I was reading the other day is Cleveland pitcher back in the 70s signed a 10-year deal for $2.3 million for 10 years. Imagine that one of the first ones that there was long. That was 10 years, $2.3 million.
But
Now 10
imagine
years,
in
you get 300.
but imagine in 1973 for 100 or $200,000 you're buying a mansion.
Yes.
We remember when $1 million was $1 million.
Yep.
I'm almost 50 now myself, but when I was a young kid growing up, $1 million bought you a mansion. $1 million was a very big deal. Now $1 million to people is like water, and it's amazing with inflation how that goes. And this is where I think about Steve and the challenges he has ahead of him now with the Angels because Otani left. Mike Trout is there. There are a lot of rumors of Trout going, but the team has said that he's staying. And I like the position Steve is in for a reason because he's walking into a situation where they're starting completely fresh. Ron Washington, new manager, essentially all new coaches, new philosophy. And it's a very good thing, I think, when you get to be part of a system to build a new system versus walking into an existing manager, existing coaches, and you're the new person and you have to follow their system. Have you been in those situations before yourself?
Yeah, I mean, once you get traded from one team to another, when you have to adjust right away of the team philosophy of how they play. And if you're playing for a last place team compared to a first place team, their philosophy is gonna be different. Why? Because you're doing something completely wrong, or at least not it's not working for you compared to the other guys. And I don't blame the coaches. Everybody have to do their job. That's the honest truth.
It's like when you're let's say the cleanup hitter on a last place team, and then you get traded at the trade deadline to a first place team, and you show up there and they're saying, okay, you're doing a utility role, you're doing a bench role, and you're like, wait a minute, I was the cleanup hitter a minute ago. I'm talking about the Yankees, obviously, but the
Yes,
Yankees in that era, they could have fielded two teams. They had so much depth, they could have fielded two teams of all the positions. They were that strong.
yes, absolutely. But you have to understand what once you play for the Yankees, and if they tell you you're gonna play only against right-handed pitchers, well, you set up your mind to play against right-handed pitchers. Plus, you're not going to discuss with the managers if is the Yankees, Cleveland, Mets, whoever you play for. You have a role. You can talk to the manager about how you feel, or you can just accept the role and continue to play, which that's what I did.
And the way the game has evolved, we talked about spring training and the preparation for spring training. When you're coaching, it's not like you get to just show up in February and start spring training. You're working throughout the off season as well. I understood from Steve. I can imagine how many meetings the coaches have. They got to make player decisions. There's constant discussion. So it's a year-round game. The way the players, you remember when players used to have an off season many years ago, like in the 70s, they'd go to the farm, they'd go on vacation, come to spring training. Spring training was the time you used to get in shape.
Mhm.
Now they're going to performance centers and they're getting in shape all year round. If you show up at spring training out of shape, you're probably out of a job. If you're a coach that hasn't prepared during the off season what you're doing and you come into spring training, you're probably not going to have a job either.
Absolutely. I mean, with analytics and everything else right now, it's a constant evaluation of the players that you had throughout the year because it's 162 games. You know how you perform away, how you perform home. In certain situations, what is your value, your true value that you bring to the team? That's how they're gonna see it, and that's how either they're gonna trade you or keep you.
And fans, I'm going to tell you, as Kareem is on week to week, please send in your questions, your comments, hit that subscribe button, notification bell. Kareem wants to hear from the fans. If you want to know
Yes,
about his playing days or his perspectives on the current game, one thing I'll say about Kareem, getting to know him, he's not shy and he definitely doesn't hold back. And that's how you played on the field, and that's how you play with the mic, certainly.
that is correct. All the questions we're here open to answer them.
So, as we're ending off today's episode, and we again welcome Karim Garcia as we start a new baseball chosen journey into 2024, as Steve Carce is now with the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. I believe they still have that long name. And he's going to be their bullpen coach this year, and he'll be back in the offseason, I'm sure, to share his stories. Kareem, reflecting back on 2023, were you surprised the Rangers won the World Series?
Yeah, I mean they had a lot of up and downs, through the season. I mean they were in first place, but they went to a slump for a little while in August, and they picked it up the right time, and in September, yeah, all these guys were unbelievable through the playoff, and I mean they deserve to win, and congratulations to the Texas Rangers.
I gotta say, like their hitting was murderer's row. I watched a lot of their
Yeah,
games during the season, 1 through 9. I mean, their number 7, 8, 9 is scarier than most teams' cleanup hitters. Like they were so stacked. Seager and Simeon, the way they were seeing the ball, it felt like they were going to win every game 50-0, and they had good pitching. I mean, at the end of the day, there was a point that they had 7 starters. Imagine in this day and age with health and everything else, they were as stacked as they could be. It was that bullpen, that leaky bullpen in August, September that you're alluding to, and they somehow put it together. I was sitting. I've told the story before, but I was sitting in spring training, and I was looking at the betting app, and I wanted to bet on the Phillies. I said the Phillies came so close. This is gonna be their year. And I called Steve, and Steve said to me, "Don't do it. Don't do it. The odds of it happening are not good." I said, "But look at the odds. I'm gonna make 200,000. Don't do it." And they didn't even make it to the World Series at the end. So
yeah,
it's a funny game because you look at the lineups and you look on paper and you're saying this is the way it has to go, but baseball's not played on paper.
exactly, absolutely. You're gonna play 9 innings, and the last three outs are the most difficult ones.
And my last question for you on today's episode: have you been following the Cooperstown Hall of Fame vote?
I have not so far because I've been working on a couple other things, but I mean, it's going to be very interesting for this year.
Joe Mauer, first time on. You think he's getting in?
He had a good career, nothing like Mike Piazza, nothing like Ivan Rodriguez, one of those guys. I mean, he got a couple of championship batting titles, stuff like that. But I mean, he played in a team that didn't win a World Series. Every time they went to the playoff on the first year, they were knocked out. I mean, it's difficult, but nowadays the both is also different.
It's very different. I mean, and the way I describe it, back in our day again, when you have the Alan Trammels of this world and Jack Morris's, and they're struggling to get in. I mean, Jack Morris was almost a guaranteed complete game every single time, and this guy's struggling, and Scott Rowland gets in. The voters look at it very differently. They're looking, I think, a lot of personality. They're looking at WAR. They're looking at all sorts of metrics. It's a funny game. Like the one guy I always bring up to me is Omar Vizquel. If you watched Omar Vizquel, he was guaranteed on the field. I mean, I think the best defensive shortstop I've ever seen in my life. I mean, he was so automatic. If Ozzie Smith is in, to me, Omar Vizquel is in. That's the example I give. But the voters are funny people that way.
Yes, they are. I mean, I
Yeah.
played with Omar and Roberto Alomar. That combination, the double play combination was unbelievable, unreal, and that was every single day.
Wow, being able to watch them game in and game out. I've seen a lot of Roberto Alomar's games, and the Toronto fans were very excited when he first got here. He was replacing a favorite in Tony Fernandez. I
Yeah.
would say one of the best all-around players I've ever seen. I mean, from every perspective, as far as with the bat, the glove, the speed, Roberto Alomar could do it everything. Uh, it's just you're singing a day and age and you're like, wow, we were so spoiled, as far as the talents that we had. And in this day and age, it's funny because players are stronger than ever. They're going to performance centers, yet they're injured more than ever. And it's just the game has evolved. Everything has evolved how we looked at it. And the one thing I would say, looking into 2024, is they keep tweaking the game. Is at some point leave the game as pure as can be. The more you keep playing around with pitch clocks and ghost runners, to me as a purist, it kind of turns me off. Do you feel the same way?
Absolutely. Yeah, they started way back when with Posey, started with no hitting the catchers, no contact in second base. You have to slide to the side. And now with the pitch clock now, again they switched it. And now you can only go to the visit one less time to the mound as a pitching coach. All these changes, gets confused to the players. It takes time to adjust. Now what they did is they bring back the stolen bases. Yeah, that's great. That's pure, pure speed. The guys that can run. But if you know that they throw only two times to the base and they're not gonna throw the third time, either if he slide steps or you just going no matter what. I mean, that's ridiculous. That part is different.
I always give the example compared to hockey in the NHL. When they went to the shootouts to end the game, I
Mhm.
said the day that Major League Baseball ends a game on home run derbies, I am finished with baseball. So I hope we never ever see that day. Folks, this has been the Chosen Baseball Journey with Jonathan A. Cohen, Karim Garcia. We'll be back next week. And for the next couple of weeks, I picked up some interesting players that I know Karim will be pretty familiar with, and let's get his perspective on them. So stay tuned.